The sharp, antiseptic tang of industrial cleaners couldn't mask the underlying scent of fear that permeated Nexus Station. Cadet Aria Voss inhaled deeply, letting her enhanced olfactory receptors parse the chemical signatures that wafted through the sterile corridor. Something had gone terribly wrong in Research Sector 7, and now her squad was being deployed to clean up the mess. "Final equipment check," Lieutenant Torres barked through the comlink. "We're approaching the breach zone in 2 minutes." Aria's fingers moved automatically over her tactical gear. Pulse rifle charged. Armor seals intact. Bioscanner calibrated. The weight of the standard-issue combat knife pressed reassuringly against her thigh. She preferred close combat, relying on the reflexes and strength that set her apart from ordinary recruits. The enhancements had been painful, but they made her valuable, useful. Captain Dre Mercer's voice cut through her thoughts. "Remember your orders. The specimen is to be captured alive if possible, terminated if necessary. Under no circumstances is it to escape containment." The squad's acknowledgments echoed through the comm channel, but Aria remained silent, studying the briefing data scrolling across her tactical display. The escaped specimen, classified as Apex Predator, was the latest in a series of biological weapons experiments conducted at Nexus. According to the limited information provided, it had escaped during a routine transfer, killing 2 lab technicians and injuring 3 security personnel before disappearing into the station's maintenance tunnels. What the briefing didn't explain was why a cadet training squad had been assigned to hunt it down instead of the station's dedicated security forces. The airlock to Research Sector 7 hissed open, and the team moved forward in practiced formation. Aria took point, her enhanced senses making her the natural choice for tracking. The corridor beyond showed signs of struggle, smeared blood on pristine white walls, overturned equipment carts, and the acrid scent of discharged weapons. "Voss, what are you picking up?" Sergeant Hale Rourke asked, his voice tense beneath forced calm. Aria crouched beside a dark smear on the floor, dabbing her gloved finger in the substance. "Blood, but," she frowned, bringing it closer to her nose. "It's not human. The chemical composition is wrong. Higher iron content. Different proteins." She stood, eyes tracking the splatter pattern. Whatever was bleeding was heading toward the lower maintenance shafts. Captain Mercer stepped forward, his face impassive behind his tactical visor. "Then, that's where we're going. Voss, take point. Rourke, Chang, guard our flanks. The rest of you, maintain formation." As they descended into the dimly lit maintenance corridors, Aria felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling up her spine. At first, she attributed it to the adrenaline of a live hunt, but as they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, she recognized it for what it was: instinct. Something primal and buried beneath layers of military conditioning was responding to the creature's trail. The blood drops had become more sporadic, but Aria followed them unerringly, relying less on sight and more on the subtle changes in air composition. The creature was injured but moving with purpose, not panic. That suggested intelligence, a trait not mentioned in the briefing. "Sir," she said quietly, "I think we should reevaluate our approach. This isn't behaving like a typical escape response." "Stick to the mission parameters, Cadet," Mercer replied coldly. "Your job is to track, not analyze." The rebuke stung, but Aria had long since learned to compartmentalize such feelings. She continued forward, every sense alert, as they entered a junction of service tunnels. The trail led toward a defunct processing chamber, and Aria signaled for the squad to halt. "It's in there," she whispered, gesturing toward the darkened entrance. "The blood trail ends at the threshold." "Heat signatures?" Rourke asked, checking a scanner. "Negative," replied Chang from the rear. "Either it's cold-blooded, or it's masking its thermal output." Captain Mercer's lips thinned to a hard line. "Deploy stun grenades and prepare to breach. Remember, capture is primary, termination secondary." As the squad prepared for entry, Arya felt that strange sensation again, stronger now, a pull at the back of her mind. The creature wasn't just hiding, it was waiting. And somehow, she knew it was waiting for her. The stun grenades detonated with blinding flashes and concussive force, and the squad surged forward into the chamber. Arya moved with practiced efficiency, her rifle sweeping the shadows as her enhanced vision adjusted to the darkness. The chamber had once housed atmospheric processing equipment, but now stood abandoned, its massive machinery silent and covered in dust. Perfect hiding ground for something that didn't want to be found. "Movement! 3 o'clock!" Chang called out, and weapons immediately trained on a shadowy corner. Arya approached cautiously, rifle raised. In the darkness between two hulking machines lay a form, sleek, muscular, and motionless. Dark fluid pooled beneath it, and its chest showed no signs of movement. "Target appears down," she reported, moving closer. "Confirm termination," Mercer ordered sharply. Something wasn't right. The creature showed no reaction to the stun grenades, no signs of panic or flight. Its posture was too perfect, too deliberate. Arya raised her scanner, registering faint but definite life signs. Before she could report her findings, the creature's nostrils flared almost imperceptibly, drawing in her scent. A tremor of recognition passed through its body, so subtle that only Arya's enhanced perception could have caught it. And then, in a response that defied every tactical expectation, the creature went completely limp, its muscles relaxing into a perfect mimicry of death. It was playing dead. The realization hit Arya with unexpected force. This wasn't the mindless aggression of a bioweapon. This was strategy, intelligent, calculated survival behavior. The apex predator had sniffed her blood in the air and chosen to avoid combat rather than engage. "Sir," she began, uncertainty coloring her voice. "I don't think—" "If you can't confirm termination, then finish it," Mercer cut in, stepping forward with his sidearm drawn. "That's an order, Cadet." Arya stood frozen, rifle aimed at the creature's head, finger hovering over the trigger. Military discipline demanded obedience, but something deeper, something in her blood, screamed against it. "It's not dead," she finally said, lowering her weapon slightly. "But it's not attacking either. I think it's intelligent enough to surrender." Mercer's face contorted with anger. "That's not your call to make. It's dangerous, and our orders are clear." "With respect, sir, our orders were to capture if possible. This could be our chance to take it alive." The standoff lasted only seconds before Rourke broke the tension. "Captain, the containment team is 8 minutes out. We could secure the perimeter and wait for proper equipment." Mercer's jaw worked silently before he gave a curt nod. "Secure the area. No one approaches the specimen. Voss, you're relieved of point duty. Fall back to rear guard." As Arya reluctantly retreated, she cast one last glance at the creature. For the briefest moment, she could have sworn its eye opened, just a slit, regarding her with an intelligence that chilled and fascinated her in equal measure. The containment team arrived with specialized equipment, sealing the creature in a reinforced transport capsule. Throughout the process, it maintained its facade of death, offering no resistance. Only Arya noticed the minute adjustments it made to accommodate the restraints, the careful regulation of its breathing to appear lifeless. As they escorted the capsule back toward Research Sector 7, Lieutenant Torres fell in beside Arya. "You're quiet, Voss. First live combat situation getting to you?" Arya shook her head. "Something doesn't add up. Why send cadets after a high-value specimen? Why wasn't security deployed immediately after the breach?" Torres frowned. "Above our pay grade, Cadet. We follow orders. We don't question them." But the questions persisted as they delivered their quarry to the waiting research team. While the rest of the squad was dismissed for debriefing, Captain Mercer unexpectedly ordered Arya to report to the biological analysis lab. The lab was a sterile environment of gleaming equipment and transparent containment units. The apex predator had been transferred to a central examination chamber, where it continued its performance of death despite being surrounded by sensors and monitoring equipment. A slender woman in a lab coat approached, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence behind stylish glasses. "Cadet Voss, I'm Dr. Lian Cho, lead geneticist. Captain Mercer suggested you might have some insights into our subject's behavior." Arya straightened, surprised at being consulted. "It was playing dead, ma'am. It assessed the threat and chose to avoid combat rather than engage, even when cornered." Dr. Cho nodded thoughtfully. "Sophisticated survival instinct. Far beyond what we expected at this stage." She gestured Arya closer to a display terminal. "But that's not the only interesting development. Look at these blood analysis results." The screen showed two parallel genetic sequences, highlighted to show similarities. The left is the apex predator's DNA. The right— She gave Arya a penetrating look. "The right is yours, Cadet." Arya stared at the display, shock washing through her. "That's not possible." "Not only possible, but deliberate," Dr. Cho replied quietly. "You and the apex were grown from the same genetic foundation, different expressions of the same basic template. You were designed for human integration, combat efficiency, enhanced senses. It was designed for pure predatory function." The room seemed to tilt beneath Arya's feet. "I'm human," she insisted, the words sounding hollow even to herself. "Enhanced human," Dr. Cho corrected gently. "Just as it is an enhanced predator. Two sides of the same experimental coin." Arya's mind raced through implications, each more disturbing than the last. "It recognized me," she realized aloud. "It smelled my blood and knew we were related." "Which explains its non-aggressive response," Dr. Cho agreed. "This changes our understanding of its cognitive capabilities. I'll need to run more tests." The conversation was interrupted as Captain Mercer entered the lab, his face hard with suspicion. "Dr. Cho, I need a moment with Cadet Voss." The scientist nodded reluctantly and stepped away, leaving Arya to face her commander alone. "You deliberately interfered with the mission," Mercer stated, without preamble, his voice low and dangerous. "You recognized something about that creature and chose to protect it." "No, sir," Arya replied, keeping her voice steady. "I assessed the tactical situation and determined capture was viable, per our orders." "Don't lie to me, Cadet." He stepped closer, invading her space. "There's something you're not telling me about your interaction with the specimen." Arya met his gaze unflinchingly. "I've reported everything relevant to the mission, sir." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "You're confined to quarters pending a full investigation. I'm recommending your removal from the cadet program and reassignment to the research division. As a subject—" The threat hung in the air between them, its implications clear. Arya had seen others reassigned to research, cadets who showed unusual abilities or unexplained reactions to training. None had ever returned to active duty. "Yes, sir," she responded, her face carefully blank. "Permission to collect personal effects before confinement?" He waved dismissively. "Escort will be provided. Report to Security Station 4 in 30 minutes." As Mercer turned to leave, Dr. Cho approached again, her expression carefully neutral. "Captain, before you go, the preliminary analyses you requested." She handed over a data tablet, adding casually, "I've also sent copies to your superior officers, as per protocol." A flash of annoyance crossed Mercer's face, but he nodded curtly and departed. Once he was gone, Dr. Cho turned to Arya, speaking rapidly in a low voice. "Listen carefully. The Apex isn't just playing dead anymore. It's communicating. The patterns of its autonomic responses form a binary code when monitored over time. It's been repeating the same message for the past hour. She pulled up another display, showing a simple sequence translated into text. Same blood, same prison, escape together. Arya stared at the message, her military training warring with the newfound knowledge of her origins. Why are you showing me this? Dr. Cho's eyes darted to the doorway before she answered. Because I helped create you both, and I can't bear to see either of you dissected for the next phase of the program. She pressed a small data chip into Arya's palm. Security access codes, station schematics, and transport authorization. The Apex will be moved to deep storage at 0200 hours. That's your window. You're asking me to desert, Arya said, but made no move to return the chip. I'm giving you a choice, Dr. Cho corrected. Something neither of you were ever meant to have. Over the next several hours, confined to her Spartan quarters, Arya reviewed the contents of the data chip. The information it contained went far beyond escape routes. It detailed the entire history of the symbiotic combat evolution program that had created both her and the apex predator. The program had begun with the ambitious goal of creating perfect soldiers, humans enhanced with predatory DNA for combat efficiency, and predators enhanced with human DNA for intelligence and trainability. Both were meant to work in tandem, the human soldiers directing their predator counterparts in battle situations too dangerous for conventional forces. But the initial results had been deemed too unpredictable. The enhanced humans, like Arya, showed too much independence, questioning orders and developing moral objections to certain missions. The enhanced predators demonstrated unexpected empathy and selective targeting, refusing to attack certain subjects that shared genetic markers with them. The military overseers had decided to separate the program tracks, isolating the human subjects from knowledge of their predator counterparts. Arya's entire cadet training had been a controlled experiment, testing her combat effectiveness while monitoring her for signs of the defective empathy that had plagued earlier subjects. And now, the apex predator, her genetic sibling in a very real sense, was scheduled for vivisection to determine why it had displayed suboptimal aggression responses during its escape. Its intelligence, the very trait that had led it to recognize and spare Arya, was deemed a liability rather than an asset. The realization crystallized a decision in Arya's mind. Her lifetime of military conditioning meant little against the fundamental violation at the core of her existence. She had been created, not born, shaped for someone else's purpose. Her autonomy, an illusion carefully maintained by her creators. At exactly 45 hours, Arya disabled the surveillance system in her quarters, using a technique gleaned from the data chip. Dressed in her standard-issue training gear, she slipped into the corridor and made her way toward the research sector, using maintenance passages to avoid security checkpoints. The station's night cycle meant minimal staffing, but she still encountered occasional patrols. Each time, she used her enhanced hearing to anticipate their approach and find concealment until they passed. She reached the biological containment area at 153, just as the transport team was preparing the apex predator for relocation. From her vantage point in an overhead maintenance duct, she could see the creature strapped to a reinforced gurney, still maintaining its death-like stillness, despite being heavily sedated. Dr. Cho was present, overseeing the process with 2 security officers and a transport technician. As Arya watched, the doctor deliberately engaged the security team in a discussion of transfer protocols, creating a momentary distraction. Arya seized the opportunity, dropping silently from the duct and approaching the gurney from behind. The apex predator's nostrils flared slightly at her approach, the only indication it was aware of her presence. "I know you can understand me," she whispered, working quickly to loosen its restraints. "We have one chance. When I create a diversion, head for maintenance shaft 3C. Wait for me there." The creature gave no obvious response, but she sensed a subtle shift in its muscle tension, preparation for movement. Returning to the duct, Arya moved to a junction box controlling the sector's environmental systems. Using Dr. Cho's access codes, she triggered an emergency decontamination sequence in the adjacent laboratory. Alarms blared, and the automatic containment protocol sealed several doors, separating Dr. Cho and one security officer from the transport gurney and the remaining personnel. In the ensuing confusion, the apex predator made its move. With lightning speed, it broke free of its remaining restraints and incapacitated the second security officer with a precise strike to the head. The transport technician fled, sealing emergency bulkheads behind him. Arya dropped from the duct again, coming face to face with the creature for the first time without barriers between them. It stood bipedal, but hunched, its powerful frame covered in sleek, dark skin that shifted with hints of iridescence under the emergency lighting. Its face combined feline and reptilian features in a disturbing, but somehow harmonious blend, with eyes that reflected an intelligence that transcended animal cunning. For a long moment, they simply regarded each other, genetic siblings meeting in recognition. "This way," Arya finally said, indicating the maintenance access point. The creature nodded, a distinctly human gesture that sent a chill down Arya's spine, and followed her into the narrow passage. They had traveled only a short distance when the station's security systems moved to full alert. Mercer's voice echoed through the announcement system. "Attention all personnel. Security breach in Research Sector 7. Cadet Arya Voss is to be detained on site. She is believed to be aiding the escape of a dangerous specimen. Consider both targets hostile and approach with extreme caution." Arya increased her pace, guiding the apex predator through a labyrinth of service tunnels and emergency bypasses. They encountered no resistance until reaching a junction leading to the station's communication hub, a necessary detour if they hoped to disable the tracking systems that would otherwise prevent any escape vessel from departing. 4 security officers had been positioned at the junction, armed with stun batons and restraint nets clearly designed for the apex. Arya signaled for the creature to halt while she assessed the situation. To her surprise, the apex moved past her, making a series of quick hand gestures that she somehow understood intuitively. It was suggesting a coordinated attack. It would draw their attention from the front while she circled behind. The plan worked perfectly. The security team focused entirely on the more visibly threatening apex as it approached the junction, allowing Arya to slip through a ventilation shaft and emerge behind them. By the time they realized they faced 2 opponents instead of 1, it was too late. The combination of Arya's combat training and the apex's raw power made short work of the security team. As they secured the unconscious officers, Arya glanced at her unlikely partner. "You can communicate. Really communicate." The apex made a guttural sound that might have been a laugh. When it spoke, its voice was rough and halting, but unmistakably deliberate. Not like humans, but enough. "You've been able to speak this whole time?" Arya asked, stunned despite everything she'd learned. "Learning. Listening." It tapped its head. "Made to learn quickly. Like you." A surge of questions rose in Arya's mind, but security protocols interrupted them as the entire sector went into lockdown. Emergency bulkheads began closing throughout the maintenance system. "We need to reach the communications hub," she said urgently. "They're sealing us in." The apex nodded, and they raced through the narrowing gaps between closing barriers, relying on Arya's knowledge of the station layout and the creature's surprising agility. They reached the communications hub just as the final bulkhead was descending, sliding beneath it with seconds to spare. The hub was automated, its banks of servers and communication arrays operating without human supervision during night cycle. Arya moved quickly to the main control terminal, using Dr. Cho's access codes to bypass the security protocols. "What are you doing?" the apex asked, keeping watch at the sealed entrance. "Disabling the tracking systems," Arya explained, fingers flying over the interface. "And erasing our genetic profiles from the central database. If we're going to escape, we can't leave them any way to hunt us down." The apex made a sound of approval, then suddenly tensed. "Others coming. Many?" Arya nodded, hearing the approaching footsteps, even through the sealed bulkhead. "They'll have override codes. We don't have much time." As she worked, the terminal suddenly displayed an incoming communication. To her surprise, it was Dr. Cho, her face tense with urgency. "Arya, they know what you're doing. Mercer has deployed the full security complement, and he's activated the failsafe." "Failsafe?" Arya asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "A kill switch, embedded in both of you during development. Remote-activated paralytic toxin that will trigger in exactly 7 minutes. You need to purge it from your systems before then." The apex growled, a hand moving instinctively to the back of its neck, where a small lump was now visible beneath the skin. "How?" Arya demanded, feeling for a similar lump on her own neck. "Medical Bay has the countermeasure. Sublevel 2, Section 8. The codes I gave you will work, but you'll have to hurry." Dr. Cho glanced over her shoulder nervously. "I've tried to slow them down, but Mercer is out for blood now. He knows I helped you." The communication cut off abruptly, and seconds later, the bulkhead began to rise. Security forces would be through within moments. "New plan," Arya said, grabbing the Apex's arm. "We need to reach medical." They escaped through a maintenance hatch just as the security team breached the communications hub. The route to Sublevel 2 was direct but heavily monitored. They would never reach it undetected. "Need distraction," the Apex said, its speech becoming more fluid under pressure. Arya nodded, quickly accessing the environmental controls through a junction box. "I'm going to trigger fire suppression in Sectors 3 through 6. It'll flood those areas with containment foam and force an evacuation, drawing security away from our path." The plan worked, creating enough chaos for them to reach Sublevel 2 with minimal resistance. They encountered only 2 security officers, whom the Apex efficiently incapacitated without causing serious injury. The medical bay was locked down but yielded to Dr. Cho's access codes. Inside, Arya quickly located the storage unit containing emergency countermeasures, while the Apex secured the entrance. "Here," she said, finding 2 injectors labeled with their specific genetic identifiers. "These must be it." The Apex approached cautiously, eyeing the injectors with suspicion. "Trust?" it asked simply. Arya hesitated. The injector could contain anything: another toxin, a tracking device, or the promised countermeasure. But the alternative was certain incapacitation when the kill switch activated. "We don't have a choice," she said, checking the time. 3 minutes left. She administered her injector first, then helped the Apex position its own at the base of its skull, where the lump was most prominent. Both felt an immediate burning sensation that spread outward from the injection site, followed by a wave of nausea. "Did it work?" Arya gasped, fighting to remain standing as the room spun around her. The Apex didn't answer immediately, its powerful form trembling with the strain of the countermeasure. Finally, it straightened, shaking its head to clear it. "Think so. Feel different." Arya was about to respond when the medical bay doors exploded inward. Captain Mercer stood in the doorway, flanked by a full tactical team including Sergeant Rourke. All had weapons trained on Arya and the Apex. "Stand down, Cadet," Mercer ordered, his voice cold with fury. "Step away from the specimen." Arya positioned herself partially in front of the Apex, her hands raised but stance defiant. "It's not a specimen. It's a sentient being that you created and then planned to dissect." "It's military property," Mercer countered. "As are you. This little rebellion ends now." Rourke stepped forward, his expression troubled. "Arya, don't make this worse. We can work something out." "Like you worked something out for the others?" she challenged. "The failed subjects who were reassigned when they showed too much independence?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Rourke's face. "What are you talking about?" Mercer cut in sharply. She's been compromised by the specimen. It's affecting her mind somehow. He raised his weapon. Last chance, Voss. Step aside, or we take you both down. The apex moved then, a blur of motion that positioned it fully in front of Arya. No, it growled, the single word laden with unmistakable determination. In that moment of standoff, the station's emergency alert system suddenly activated, and Dr. Cho's voice echoed through the facility. Attention all Nexus Station personnel. Emergency evacuation protocols are now in effect. This is not a drill. Genetic containment has been compromised in research sectors 3 through 9. Quarantine measures will initiate in 10 minutes. Proceed immediately to designated evacuation points. The announcement created instant confusion among the tactical team. Sergeant Rourke turned to Mercer. Sir, orders? Mercer's face contorted with indecision before hardening into resolve. Maintain position. This is a diversion. With respect, sir. One of the tactical team members interjected. Quarantine protocols will seal this entire section. If we don't move now. I said maintain position, Mercer shouted. The specimens are not leaving this station. The tension broke when Sergeant Rourke suddenly lowered his weapon. No, sir. I'm not dying for this. He looked at Arya, then the apex. Whatever's happening here, it's above my pay grade. I'm evacuating as ordered. One by one, the other tactical team members made the same choice, backing away toward the exit until only Mercer remained. His weapon still trained on Arya and the apex. You're throwing away everything, he said, addressing Arya with bitter disappointment. A career, a purpose. For what? Some misguided sense of kinship with a lab experiment? For choice, Arya replied simply. Something you never intended either of us to have. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for a second announcement that cut through the tension. Quarantine protocols initiating. 7 minutes to complete lockdown. All personnel must evacuate immediately. Mercer's resolve visibly wavered, self-preservation warring with obsessive determination. Finally, with a curse, he lowered his weapon. This isn't over, Voss. There's nowhere in the system you can hide. As he retreated, the apex turned to Arya. Need to leave, now. She nodded, already moving toward the door. The evacuation shuttles will be our best chance. If everyone's evacuating, we can blend into the chaos. They made their way to the nearest evacuation point, where panicked station personnel were being loaded onto transport shuttles, with minimal security screening. In the confusion, Arya acquired 2 environmental hazard suits from an emergency locker, allowing them to conceal their identities. The apex struggled briefly with the unfamiliar constraints of the suit, but adapted quickly, mimicking Arya's movements to appear as normal as possible among the frightened evacuees. They were nearly aboard a shuttle when a voice called out behind them. Voss, wait! Arya turned to see Dr. Cho hurrying toward them, clutching a small case. Take this, she said breathlessly, pressing it into Arya's hands. Complete genetic profiles, research notes, everything you'll need to understand what you both are. She glanced nervously at the apex. And to prevent the side effects. Side effects? Arya questioned. There's no time, Dr. Cho insisted. The countermeasure you administered disabled the kill switch, but it has its own complications. The data will explain everything. She looked between them, eyes bright with a mixture of guilt and hope. Find your way to the outer colonies. There are others like you there, earlier subjects who escaped. They can help. Before Arya could respond, alarm klaxons blared, and the final boarding call for the evacuation shuttles echoed through the bay. Go, Dr. Cho urged, stepping back. I've done what I can to cover your tracks, but it won't hold for long. Arya hesitated, a lifetime of military conditioning making this final step the hardest. Thank you, she said finally, for giving us a chance. As they boarded the shuttle, Arya felt the apex's presence close behind her, not threatening, but reassuring in its strange familiarity. They found seats near the rear, away from the shuttle's few security personnel, and braced for departure. The journey to the nearest outpost was tense but uneventful. The evacuation protocols had created such chaos that individual tracking was temporarily impossible, giving them a narrow window of opportunity to disappear. At the outpost, a sprawling, overcrowded station serving as a waypoint between Earth and the outer colonies, they discarded their hazard suits and used access codes from Dr. Cho's data to requisition basic supplies and passage on a freight transport bound for the frontier. It was only when they were safely aboard the freighter, hidden among cargo containers in the vast hold, that Arya finally examined the case Dr. Cho had given them. It contained data crystals, medical supplies, and identity chips that could be programmed with new personas, everything they would need to forge new lives beyond the reach of military authority. The Apex watched curiously as she sorted through the contents. "Why help us?" it asked, its speech continuing to improve with each interaction. "Because she made us," Arya replied, "and couldn't live with what they planned to do to us." "Not us," the Apex corrected. "You. I was always for dissection. You were the success." Arya looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Heard them. When pretending death." It tapped its skull. "Memory perfect. They said, Voss is the viable template. This one shows too much deviation. Extract useful genetic material, then terminate." A chill ran through Arya. "So my squad wasn't sent to capture you. We were sent to test me, to see if I would recognize you, if I would respond to our shared genetics." "Yes. Final test before combat deployment." The Apex settled back against a cargo container. "You failed their test. Good failure." Arya managed a grim smile. "I suppose it was." They fell silent as the freighter's engines rumbled to life, beginning the long journey to the outer colonies. Arya knew the road ahead would be difficult. They would be hunted, possibly for years, by a military that considered them valuable property, rather than sentient beings with rights. But as she watched the Apex, her genetic sibling, her unlikely ally, examining its surroundings with intelligent curiosity, she felt something she hadn't experienced since her earliest memories. Hope. Not the conditional approval that came from successful mission completion, but genuine hope for a future determined by her own choices. "Do you have a name?" she asked suddenly. "Something other than Apex Predator?" The creature considered this, head tilted in thought. "No name given. Only designation, AP7. "Would you like one? A real name?" For the first time, the Apex's features shifted into what might have been a smile, a strange expression on its predatory face, but unmistakable in its sentiment. "Yes. Would like name." Arya thought for a moment, then suggested, "Talon? It means a claw, something strong and natural." The Apex tested the word, its alien vocal structure giving the name a unique inflection. "Talon. Good name. Strong name." It looked at her with unexpected warmth. Arya and Talon, two who chose freedom. Two who chose each other, Arya corrected softly. "When every instinct they gave us said we should be enemies." The freighter lurched as it achieved escape velocity, leaving the outpost and, symbolically, their past lives behind. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the constant threat of recapture. But also possibility, the chance to define themselves beyond the parameters of their creation. In the dim light of the cargo hold, Arya unsealed one of the data crystals and began to read, learning the truth about her origins and the extent of the modifications that made her something more than human. Beside her, Talon kept watch, its heightened senses alert for any threat to their fragile freedom. They were, in the most fundamental sense, experiments, created rather than born, designed for purposes not of their choosing. But in their shared rejection of those purposes, they had claimed something that transcended their artificial origins, self-determination. As the freighter carried them toward the distant lights of the outer colonies, Arya realized that this was just the beginning of their story, not the one written in a laboratory by scientists and military strategists, but one they would write themselves, choice by choice, day by day, together. 3 weeks later, their freighter docked at Perimeter Station, a ramshackle outpost on the very edge of colonized space. The station served as a supply point for mining operations in the asteroid belt, and as a haven for those seeking to disappear from official records. Using the identity chips provided by Dr. Cho, Arya and Talon disembarked as Arya Chen and her security escort, Talon, ostensibly representatives of a minor mining consortium conducting a facility inspection. The disguise was thin, but sufficient for a station where few asked questions, as long as the proper fees were paid. They secured modest quarters in the station's residential sector and began the painstaking process of planning their next move. The data from Dr. Cho had provided crucial information about their physical needs, specialized nutritional requirements, potential medical complications from their genetic modifications, and warning signs of the side effects she had mentioned. Neural degradation, Arya read aloud from the data display, her voice tight with concern. Without regular treatments, the enhanced cognitive functions begin to break down, leading to aggression, paranoia, and eventually, complete neural collapse. Talon, who had been adapting with remarkable speed to station life, looked up from the language tutorial he had been studying. For both of us? Yes, but manifesting differently. In your case, the human cognitive enhancements would fail first, reverting you to a more purely predatory state. In mine, she swallowed hard. The predator genes would begin to express more strongly, overriding human behavioral constraints. Dr. Cho provided treatment formula? Arya nodded, scrolling through the complex biochemical specifications. Yes, but the components are rare. Some are controlled substances available only to licensed medical facilities. We find way, Talon said with surprising confidence. Always another option. His optimism, so at odds with his fearsome appearance, brought a reluctant smile to Arya's face. Over the weeks of their journey, Talon had revealed an adaptability and intelligence that continuously surprised her. His speech had improved dramatically, and he had absorbed information about human society and customs with an almost childlike enthusiasm. Their unlikely partnership had evolved into something neither could have predicted, a friendship built on mutual dependence and the shared experience of displacement. They were, in a very real sense, the only two beings in the universe who could truly understand each other's unique situation. A sudden pounding at their door shattered the moment of connection. Talon immediately moved to a defensive position, while Arya checked the security feed. Outside stood a station security officer flanked by 2 armed guards. Their expressions were grim and purposeful. "Inspection team from the mining consortium," the officer called through the door. "We need to verify your credentials. Routine check." Arya and Talon exchanged glances. There was nothing routine about an armed credential check at this hour. "They found us," Arya whispered, quickly gathering the most essential items from Dr. Cho's case. "We need to move." Talon nodded, already assessing escape routes. The quarters had a maintenance access panel that connected to the station's service corridors, a common feature in frontier outposts, where system failures were frequent and required rapid response. As the pounding at the door grew more insistent, they slipped through the access panel and into the dimly lit maintenance corridor beyond. Behind them, they heard the security team breaching the door to their quarters. "Alert all checkpoints," a voice commanded. "The fugitives are confirmed on station. Maximum security protocols in effect." They moved swiftly through the maintenance network, relying on Arya's quick study of the station schematics and Talon's enhanced senses to avoid security patrols. Their destination was the station's shuttle bay, where independent traders and smugglers docked their vessels, often with minimal documentation and a willingness to transport unusual cargo for the right price. They had almost reached the lower levels when a security barrier unexpectedly activated, blocking their path with a field of crackling energy. Station lockdown in progress," an automated voice announced. "All personnel return to designated safe zones until further notice." Arya cursed under her breath. "They're sealing the entire station. We'll never reach the shuttle bay now." Talon surveyed their surroundings, his predator's gaze missing nothing. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow utility shaft. "Leads to exterior maintenance. Space suits there." Arya followed his indication and saw the emergency EVA equipment station. A desperate plan began to form in her mind. "If we can't get to a shuttle from inside—" "We go outside," Talon finished, already moving toward the equipment station. The EVA suits were designed for human proportions, presenting a challenge for Talon's more powerful frame. While Arya quickly donned her suit, Talon was forced to adapt, using supplementary seals and straps to accommodate his physiology. "We'll hold atmosphere," he assured her, though the makeshift adjustments looked precarious at best. Long enough. With no better options, they entered the utility shaft and sealed it behind them, initiating the airlock sequence that would allow them to exit onto the station's exterior surface. As the air cycled out of the small chamber, Arya activated her suit's magnetic boots and communication system. "Stay close," she instructed Talon. "We'll follow the maintenance rails around to the commercial docking ports. If we're lucky, we can board a vessel directly from the exterior access hatches." The airlock opened to reveal the breathtaking expanse of space beyond the station. Perimeter Station hung against the backdrop of the asteroid belt, its hodgepodge construction a testament to the frontier spirit that had built it over decades of expansion. Moving carefully along the maintenance rails, they made their way around the curving exterior of the station. Each step had to be deliberate, the magnetic boots providing their only tether to the structure. Around them, normal station operations continued, maintenance drones repairing exterior damage, cargo being transferred between docked vessels, and the constant dance of arriving and departing ships. They had traversed perhaps a third of the distance to the commercial docking area when Arya's suit sensors detected approaching security drones. "They're scanning the exterior," she warned Talon. "We need cover, now." The station's surface was a maze of protruding equipment, communication arrays, and structural supports. They took refuge behind a massive coolant exchanger, its bulk temporarily shielding them from the drone's sensors. "Cannot stay hidden long," Talon observed, his voice distorted by the suit's communication system. "Need better plan." Arya scanned their surroundings, looking for any advantage. Her gaze settled on a small vessel, docked at a research port, approximately 50 meters ahead. Unlike the military and commercial ships, this one appeared to be a private research craft, the kind used by independent scientists and explorers. "There," she said, indicating the vessel. "Less security than the commercial docks. And look, the airlock is in EVA mode. Someone's doing exterior work." Indeed, a suited figure could be seen working on an exterior panel of the ship, apparently performing routine maintenance. Talon understood immediately. "We approach, request help, claim emergency?" "Worth trying," Arya agreed. "Better than waiting to be captured." They timed their movement to coincide with the security drone's scanning pattern, emerging from cover when the drones were focused on the opposite side of the station, moving as quickly as safety allowed. They approached the research vessel and its oblivious worker. The suited figure didn't notice their approach until they were within 10 meters. When they were spotted, the person jolted in surprise, nearly losing grip on the tool they were using. Arya opened a general communication channel. "Sorry to startle you. We need help. Station security malfunction trapped us outside during an EVA exercise." There was a moment of silence before a response came through. The voice, unmistakably female and cautious. "Security malfunction. I didn't receive any alerts about that. Internal communications are affected too, Arya improvised. We're instructor and trainee from Mining Safety Division. Need to get back inside before his suit fails. She gestured to Talon, whose makeshift suit modifications were indeed beginning to show stress points. The researcher hesitated, then gestured toward her ship's airlock. Use my lock. I'll finish up here and join you in a few minutes. Relief flooded through Arya. Thank you. We appreciate it. They entered the vessel's airlock and waited anxiously as it cycled, restoring atmosphere. As soon as the pressure equalized, Talon removed his helmet, the suit having grown increasingly uncomfortable for his non-human physiology. The ship's interior was cramped but efficient, clearly designed for extended research missions with minimal crew. The main cabin combined living space and research stations, with equipment Arya recognized as geological analysis tools. Asteroid researcher, she murmured, examining the displays. Independent contractor, not military. Good, Talon replied. Less questions. Their momentary calm was shattered when the external airlock began cycling again. The researcher was returning earlier than expected. Helmet on, Arya hissed, but it was too late. Talon's damaged suit would not reseal properly, and the researcher would see him as soon as she entered. They braced for the inevitable confrontation as the inner airlock door slid open. The researcher stepped through, removing her helmet to reveal a woman in her mid-40s, her dark hair streaked with gray, and her face weathered by years in space. Her eyes widened at the sight of Talon, but instead of the terror Arya expected, her expression registered something closer to recognition. Well, she said after a long moment, setting her helmet aside with deliberate calm. This is unexpected. Symbiotic Combat Evolution Program, I presume. Arya stiffened. How do you know about the program? The woman shrugged. I helped design the original genetic sequences before the military took over. Dr. Eleanor Vale, formerly of Genesis Corporation. She studied Talon with professional interest. Impressive work. You must be from the Predator integration line, 3rd generation, judging by the cranial development. Talon growled softly, uncomfortable under her clinical gaze. And you, Dr. Vale continued, turning to Arya, must be from the Human Enhancement Division. The facial structure is distinctive, designed for enhanced sensory input, while maintaining aesthetic normalcy. We're not going back, Arya stated firmly, hand moving subtly toward the utility knife on her belt. Dr. Vale noticed the movement and held up her hands placatingly. I'm not turning you in. Quite the opposite. She moved to a storage compartment and retrieved a bottle of water, offering it to them as a peace gesture. I left the program when the military decided to weaponize what was supposed to be evolutionary research. I've been monitoring their activities ever since, trying to track what became of the subjects. Arya accepted the water but remained wary. Why should we believe you? Because I've helped others like you. Dr. Vale replied simply. The outer colonies have become something of a haven for failed experiments who manage to escape. I maintain a network of contacts who provide medical support, identity documentation, and safe passage. As if to prove her point, she accessed her ship's secure database and displayed profiles of individuals, some human-appearing, others with obvious genetic modifications. These are just a few who've passed through my network in the last 5 years, all products of military genetic programs who chose freedom over service. Arya and Talon exchanged glances, hope warring with caution. We need specialized medical treatment, Arya finally said. Neural degradation countermeasures. Dr. Vale nodded knowingly. The price of your enhancements. I'm familiar with the protocols. She studied them thoughtfully. I'm bound for Haven Colony, a research outpost beyond military jurisdiction. They have facilities that can provide what you need, and a community that includes others with unique genetic backgrounds. Why help us? Talon asked, speaking for the first time since Dr. Vale's entrance. The scientist's expression softened. Because what was done to you, to all the subjects, was wrong. You were created as tools, denied basic autonomy and dignity. She gestured to the vastness of space, visible through the viewport. Out here, on the frontier, there's room for everyone to find their own path, even those whose existence challenges conventional definitions of humanity. A sudden alert from the ship's communication system interrupted the conversation. Dr. Vale checked the message, and her expression grew serious. Station security is initiating a ship-by-ship search pattern. We need to make a decision quickly. Arya looked at Talon, seeing in his eyes the same weariness and hope that she felt. They had come too far to surrender now, and Dr. Vale's offer represented their best chance at a sustainable future. "Haven Colony," she said decisively. "If you'll take us." Dr. Vale smiled. "Welcome aboard, then. Strap in. Departure might get interesting." As the small research vessel detached from perimeter station and accelerated toward the asteroid belt, Arya felt a tension she had carried since their escape begin to ease. They were still fugitives, still pursued, still facing an uncertain future complicated by their artificial origins and medical needs. But they were no longer alone. In the viewport, the stars stretched into brilliant streaks as the ship entered FTL transit, carrying them toward a colony where difference was not just tolerated, but embraced. A place where they might, at last, find not just safety, but belonging. Beside her, Talon watched the light show with undisguised wonder, his predator's face transformed by the simple joy of freedom. In that moment, Arya knew with certainty that they had made the right choice, not just in escaping, but in trusting each other when every element of their design had intended them to be adversaries. The apex predator had sniffed her blood and chosen alliance over combat. She had recognized kinship where others saw only a weapon. Together, they had rejected the limitations of their creation and claimed the right to write their own story. Whatever challenges awaited them at Haven Colony and beyond, they would face them as they had faced everything since that first encounter in the abandoned processing chamber, together, defying expectations and forging a path neither of their creators had ever imagined possible. As Dr. Vale's ship disappeared into the depths of space, two beings created for war embraced an unexpected peace, carrying with them the revolutionary idea that the value of a life lies not in its origin, but in the choices made along the way.